Hello, everybody. This is your student aide here. Today, we're going to be talking about interest groups, lobbying, campaign, and finance. And this is kind of a broad way of telling you, but there's a bunch of other stuff I will be getting into. This is kind of going to be a little long of a video. So if you want to just skip ahead, I'm just showing you right now what we're going to be discussing. I'll try to be a little fast, but also help you guys understand because I am your student aide. But anyways, all right, let's get started. So interest groups. What are interest groups? Well, an interest group is a collection of people who share certain views on public matters and work to shape public policy to their benefit. Interest groups exist to influence public policy. This is a very important thing to memorize. Just remember that interest groups work to shape public policy. Interest groups shape public policy. Interest groups exist to influence public policy. Just memorize that and you'll be okay. Now, there are many types of interest groups, such as there's institutional membership, public interest. So institutional interest groups, which gets into trade and business, is a type of interest group which it just has individuals or organizations representing other organizations. Membership interest groups are kind of like an ideological. They're made up of Americans who join because they feel strongly about the issue. And this kind of interest group is difficulty getting funds because not everybody agrees with your opinion. For example, an interest group may base their entire group on, let's say, pro-life or pro-choice. And they will try to gather as many people as they can and try to influence public policy. It gets back to influence public policy. They want their ideas to be implemented in legal and laws. And they do get difficulty in getting funds, like I said, because not that many people agree with their ideology. So there's public interest groups, which work to promote their idea of the public good, member or not. Incentive is knowledge and benefits those who aren't even members. This is kind of what the whole point of public interest groups is. For example, you go to the store and someone's giving you pamphlets out for help save the environment. You're not a member, but you're still getting that pamphlet because your incentive is knowledge, and they're just giving it out to you to promote their idea of the public good. So this is kind of it's not, you don't have to be a member for this. For these, you may have to be members, but for this, you don't have to. So there are incentives for interest groups, such as there's always material, solidarity, purposive, or informational. These four you will need to memorize because these are type of incentives. So material, such as money, obviously, solidarity, such as social rewards. This is going to be kind of hard. I know sometimes solidarity and social, just memorize that solidarity means social. Solidarity is social. The whole point of it is because the social reward is status and companionship that lead people joining. Kind of a friendly community group. I will go online and search for some of these type of interest groups later. But for example, just on the top of my head, maybe solidarity, such as, and I'm not sure if that is a type of that interest group, but let's just say that Girl Scouts, or just a very, very popular type of interest group, which, like, let's say a Rotary Club. That's a solidarity kind of, because you're getting companionship, you're getting status. A lot of colleges like that you're in the Rotary Club, you belong in that Rotary Club, and it's automatically kind of like a social reward because colleges really like that when they see those applicants joining the Rotary Club. Let's just say that. So it's kind of like a friendly community group, and it just leads people to join because of that social reward. Purposive is kind of, you really actually care about that issue. It's a benefit that comes from serving a cause of principle, such as me. I'm very environmental advocate. So I would join, let's say, WWF, the World Wildlife Fund. And because I actually care about the environment and I actually care about the wildlife and animals. And so this is kind of a purposive interest group. Informational, it's in the word, people go there for information. it's different than public interest, because public interest, you don't have to be member. Informational, it's a membership kind of interest group, but they do give information as an incentive. So there's a lot of activities of these interest groups. This is the bolded part that I have. There's 4 different types of activities that interest groups do, which is very important. And that's how they make their difference in the public, such as member benefits and fundraising. Obviously, the WWF tote bags, the AAA discounts. People will go there for those discounts, which is kind of funny, and the tote bags, which I don't, but a lot of people do, because there's member benefits and fundraising. That's what interest groups do. They also influence public opinion, such as education, propaganda, mass mailings. You always get those, let's say you always get those pamphlets from an interest group, and you don't want to join, like the Sierra Club, you don't want to join, but they still want to give out that mass mailing just to educate people on that issue. There's also influence parties and elections, obviously, because they want their, ideology or what they're rooting for to be in law, because they influence public policy. Always gets back to that. So, such as campaign endorsements, campaign contributions, targeting opponents, PACs and volunteers. Okay, and then also influence policy and governing, such as legislator ratings and political cues. One tip that I really recommend you guys study is that within these activities of interest groups, you may want to memorize like example of each. For example, the member benefits and fundraising example is AAA discounts, influence public opinion. Example is education, propaganda, influence parties and elections, such as campaign contributions, influence policy and governing, such as legislators, ratings and political cues. Excuse me, because your teacher wants to know that you've understood this type of topic, and like you can give examples. There's also litigation, working through the courts, initiative and referendum, signatures and petitions, because yes, everybody knows that petitions do help, and they do you can voice your opinion out through that. Signatures, lobbying, direct and indirect. I will get into direct and indirect soon. So strategies of these interest groups. So how do interest groups really influence public policy? Well, there's the outsider strategy and there's the insider strategy. Outsider strategy is aimed at the changing public opinion strategy, which involves media advertising designed to educate the public, or letter writing, phone and fax campaigns designed to impress public officials. And then there's also insiders, such as strategy of lobbyists that work closely with a few key members of Congress, meeting them privately to exchange information and favors. This is kind of like a insider, like kind of like a spy, kind of you could see in a movie, like they're working closely and they're getting favors, bribing. I mean, that's not really an example, but that's not really what they do. But it's kind of like, you're meeting them privately to exchange information and favors. This is more of insider, think of inside strategy, and nobody knows about this. But outsider, yes, it's aimed at changing public opinion strategy, such as fax, letter writing. I think everybody has at least had one phone call from an election campaign saying, oh, are you going to vote for this? You can vote for this, because that's phone call, and they're using the outsider strategy to influence public opinion. There's grassroots lobbying. This is an approach that separates itself from direct lobbying through the act of asking the general public to contact legislators and government officials concerning the issue at hand, as opposed to conveying the message to the legislators directly. Sometimes interest groups may want to convey the message to the legislators directly, but the legislators really just, they're busy, and they may just ignore it. So that's a way to do that, is asking the general public themselves to contact the legislators, such as, I think everybody has had that one pop-up that says, call your representative, tell them that you want this issue to be heard, or, that automatic send an email to your representative or your senator. That's a type of, grassroots lobbying. So yeah, and then just the basic lobbying and lobbyist definition. Sometimes it is a bit confusing, I understand. So lobbying, is how interest groups influence policymakers. Lobbyists are people who do the influencing. I want to get that down. You may know all the rest, but you have to know these basic definitions of what lobbying is and what lobbyists are. Lobbying occurs wherever public policy is made, at the national, state, and local government all across the country. Think of it as lobbying occurs wherever government is. Just think about that. So getting into direct and indirect lobbying. So direct lobbying, it's the same thing, kind of like the insider game, the inside lobbying, kind of like the insider strategy, is the cheapest and most effective when the lobbyists know the process and the lawmakers, such as meeting, schmoozing, providing testimony. It's more of that inside game, if you get what I mean. Indirect lobbying is kind of like working from outside the system. These are grassroots efforts like letter writing campaigns, protests, use of media and publicity, campaign contributions. So I know that this may get a little confusing because indirect, direct, and then there's strategies. Just think that in direct lobbying and indirect lobbying is a type of lobbying. That's how interest groups influence the policymakers. That's how they get out there and influence the people. Strategies, the outside or inside strategy, this is the ways they do it. That's just how they do it, and this is the way they do it. I hope that made sense. Sometimes that do not make sense. That's okay. Iron triangle. It does sound very, that's like crazy. Sounds really cool, but it's kind of like you just need to memorize this triangle. That's what I did for mine. I actually wrote this triangle and drew this triangle out like almost 5 times on my paper, and I memorized it because kind of had to. But yeah. So iron triangle, it's legal for former government employees to lobby the agency they came from, kind of like the revolving door, which I will get into. It's like going from Congress to being a lobbyist, which is now legal, with a cooling off period. I think I didn't make that sense, but what example is like, going from Congress. For example, if you have a job you had a job from Congress and now you want to be a lobbyist. That is legal, but only if it's with a cooling off period. You can't just immediately directly go from Congress job to a lobbyist. That's illegal. You have to have a cooling off period, maybe 5 or 6 months. Yeah, so because it's a conflict of interest, because you may lobby for, the inside game of that job that you previously had. So you may lobby against them. Those strategies. So it is illegal for the former government employees to lobby the agency they came from, because that is a conflict of interest. So there's interest group, bureaucracy, and Congress, this is the iron triangle. Memorize this. I really recommend it. So interest group provides electoral support to Congress, right? And then Congress gives the funding and political support to the bureaucracy. Then the bureaucracy gives low regulation special favors to the interest groups. I really didn't memorize the inside, like right here, the blue part. I just memorized the red, the main idea of what Congress, bureaucracy, and interest group does. Moving on, revolving door is a term describing the movement of individuals from government positions to jobs with interest groups or lobbying firms and vice versa. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing as the iron triangle. It's like a conflict of interest, a term describing the movement. A great way to memorize is taking these definitions, like such as revolving door, and writing them down on a separate sheet of paper multiple times until you get it down. For me, I have a lot of written part for my government curriculum, so I really recommend you writing these definitions down. So as soon as you get your exam, you will be set and you will do great because you already have that definition down, and you are writing most of the time. So I really recommend that in government, AP government, or dual enrollment. I don't mind, whatever one. Anyways, landmark cases, financing elections. So there are 3 really big ones that you have to memorize. Your exam will definitely get into this. There's such as Buckley versus Valeo, McConnell versus Federal Election Commission, and Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission. Okay, so and also on my previous video, I said something about Citizens versus FEC, and I've said Citizens United versus United States, but that is incorrect. I'm going to put an annotation on there to correct myself. It is FEC. It's against the FEC, not the United States, because the FEC, which I will get into, is something else. So anyways, Buckley versus Valeo is held that the law limiting contributions to political campaigns was constitutional, but that one restricting a candidate's expenditures of his or her money was not. Like I said, write these down. I guarantee you will understand them way better, and you'll have the basic definition down for all these cases. Take a separate sheet of paper, look at what I have written, and copy them, or put in your own words. Write them on a separate sheet of paper and write what is the McConnell versus this and this. What is Buckley versus Valeo? What is Citizens United versus FEC? I'm telling you, this will really help. So Buckley versus Valeo, all it is saying is that, see, for example, contributions to political campaigns, they're just saying that was constitutional, but that one restricting a candidate's expenditure of his or own money was not. For example, Trump, he is a billionaire and he can spend his money as much as he wants on his own campaign. That's what it really established. The candidate himself can spend his or her expenditures or money for his own campaign. Because it would be a freedom of, I guess, it violates the Constitution, because it's not. It would be unconstitutional. So all Buckley versus Valeo is saying that a candidate's expenditures of his or her money can be spent unlimited. So McConnell versus FEC, it upheld the 2002 Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, popularly known as the McCain-Feingold Law, prohibiting corporations and labor unions from running ads that mention candidates and their positions for days before a federal general election. This is kind of straightforward. You just prohibits the corporations and labor unions from running ads that mention candidates and their positions for days before a federal general election. Yeah, and it's kind of straightforward. Citizens United versus FEC is overturned part of 2002 law. They're talking about the bipartisan that had prohibited corporate and union funding of campaign ads. So the Citizens United, if y'all don't know, just ignore the Moana thing. Citizens United, they actually sent out this Hillary thing. It was a video, I believe, of Hillary and how she's corrupted and everything. And they were not allowed. But now, with it overturned part of the 2002 law that had prohibited, it prohibited the funding of campaign ads. Yeah. All right. So the Buckley versus Valeo, getting into it a little bit more, because this is kind of a straightforward definition. Getting more into it is the significance. So Buckley versus Valeo restructured the campaign laws. Limitations on contributions from individuals and groups are no longer included in the law, so long as the individuals and groups are free from any ties with campaigns. This case also established the ability of a candidate to spend as much of their own money as they like. So all it is really saying is can't limit personal spending because of the First Amendment. Citizens United versus FEC, the Supreme Court held that corporate funding of independent political broadcasts in candidate elections cannot be limited. They cannot be limited because doing so would violate the First Amendment. Super PACs were established. This is how super PACs started increasing, because of the Citizens United versus FEC. That is really the main thing about Citizens United versus FEC. It really just established a lot of super PACs, and it was crazy. So just remember, super PACs really came out of the Citizens United versus FEC. Super PACs would not be possible without the 2010 Supreme Court decision in the Citizens United versus the FEC, which lifted prohibitions on corporate spending in elections. Corporate spending, they can spend as much as they want as long as it does not violate, cannot be limited. Just ignore that phone call in the back. And all it's saying is that it just would not be possible without it. All right. Just ignore that. So hard money versus soft money. Stupid phone. All right, hard money versus soft money. So hard money is the campaign contributions regulated and limited by the federal government that are given directly to a candidate. Soft money is when you just give money to the parties. That's really the main thing about hard money versus soft money. Hard money is just the campaign contributions given directly to a candidate. Soft money is when you give money to the parties. So hard money is limited. There are limits to how much and who can give. Soft money cannot be used to endorse a specific candidate. You can only give it directly to, for example, like the Republican Party. You can only give it to, for example, the Democratic Party. You cannot give it to Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. You're only giving it to the parties, even though Donald Trump is kind of not Republican or Democrat, but you get what I mean. It does have limits. Both of these do have limits. We'll get more into that. So also, let's get into super PACs versus PACs. I don't know why I don't have information on this, but you can probably get into that. Super PACs, also known as independent expenditures only. You want to memorize this. I'm telling you, you need to memorize this. Independent expenditure only committees. Know what super PACs are. Just memorize that super PACs are independent expenditure only committees. You may have a matching, you may have multiple choice. I guarantee you that is going to be on there. So these PACs can accept unlimited contributions and spend an unlimited amount supporting or opposing federal election candidates, but they cannot directly donate to the federal candidates or parties. For example, let's say a super PACs, for example, like a corporation sends out anti-Hillary ads out to the media, and they're all over. They can accept the unlimited contributions from people. They can spend an unlimited amount of supporting or opposing the federal election candidates, but they cannot give it to Hillary Clinton or that Donald Trump himself. They cannot donate to the federal candidates or parties. It's kind of like influencing the people's opinions, but you're not directly doing it. These are independent expenditure only groups. Spending by political action committees, corporation, or labor unions that is done to help a party or candidate, but is done independently of them, like soft money. So getting into FEC, what this is a primary United States federal law regulating political campaign spending and fundraising. The law originally focused on increasing disclosure of contributions for federal campaigns. The FEC really just set limits on donations and spending, and it did establish the FEC to regulate contributions. The FEC and the Federal Election Campaign Act is different. Do not get them confused. The FEC is the federal, hold on, I'm going back, where is it? The Federal Election Commission. That is different. The Federal Election Commission. And this is the Federal Election Campaign. All right. So Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act of 2002. I said this right around this area. Upheld the 2002 Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act. So what that is a law prohibiting national political parties, federal candidates, and office holders from asking for soft money contributions in federal elections. If you don't remember what soft money is when you give money to parties only. You cannot endorse a specific candidate. It doesn't have limits. Just remember that it's giving to parties. Hard money is you're giving it hard money like directly to a candidate. It's like kind of like hard money. Soft money given to parties. Yes. So ban on national parties and office holders raising and spending soft money. So this kind of just said it prohibits a national political parties such as Republican or Democratic parties, federal candidates, and office holders from asking for soft money contribution. You can't ask for money for those parties' contributions. This is kind of like the standby or ad, like when you hear, I am Donald Trump and I support this ad online or even on TV, or I approve this message. This is kind of requires the candidates to state that, knowing that your candidate is supporting that ad. And they're not asking for soft money contributions. Designed to cut down on negative and misleading advertisements by forcing political candidates to own up to the claims they make on television and radio. there was one very disgusting ad, in my opinion, for Ed Gillespie, I believe, and there was against Ed Gillespie. It was an ad that showed conservative flag being attached to a truck and going down and cornering a group of kids and then killing them, but when they wake up in a dream, and it was horrible. And it was just horrible. I don't even know what to say. This is designed to cut down on those ads, and the person, I believe, I forgot, the person who made that ad, he approved this message. He stood by that ad. The candidates own up to those claims and make on television and radio. This provision had failed miserably to curb the negative campaigning. It literally had no effect on those respondents' level of trust in candidates or the ads themselves. So this kind of failed. It backfired. There was what is it? There was one of those. Yes, the Citizens United versus FEC. It did overturn part of that law that had prohibited corporate and union funding of campaign ads. And yeah, so let's get into the 527 groups and 501c4s. It does sound very, oh my God, it looks really scary, but it's really not. You just memorize that the 527 groups were just independent. They're tax is exempt organizations created to raise money for those political activities. They're not subject to FEC disclosure rules, dark money. They're advocacy groups that try to influence the federal elections through voter mobilization efforts and so-called issue ads that that doubt or criticize a candidate's record. So 501c4s is a nonprofit tax-exempt interest group that engage in varying levels of political activity, and they're not subject to FEC disclosure. Honestly, I think that if you don't understand this, you can go online, maybe watch a video from Crash Course. I don't quite understand Crash Course. He goes a bit too fast for me. But if Crash Course works for you, go ahead. Yeah, just know what these are. They may ask you for these. They may not. Yeah, just memorize the definition, I guess. But just understand what they mean. Don't just, yeah. All right, so there's political cue, ratings, and earmarks. These are definitions that you definitely need to memorize, but understand also. Political cues is a signal frequently provided by interest groups that tells a politician what values are at stake in an issue and how that issue fits in his or her own set of political beliefs and agenda. I mean, straightforward. It's a signal, which is by the interest groups to tell the politician what are the stakes in this issue and how it fits in his or her agenda. Ratings is a type of cue supplied by some of interest groups that ranks the legislators on their degree of support for a political cause, such as unions or the environment. This can be helpful sources of information, but are also biased. I mean, like ratings, they're always biased because someone's rating them, literally. They're just ranking the legislators. Just know that ratings just mean like interest groups rank legislators on their degree of support for a political cause. Earmarks designed for a political purpose, which is set aside. Just think of earmarks, they're just set aside. They're designed for a political purpose. Legislation that allocates a specific amount of money for a specific project, program, or organization. It's like money that is just set aside for a specific program, I guess, to improve it. So yes, the Federalist Papers. So you may have already know what the Federalist Papers 10 is, but it does go back to the Federalist Paper. James Madison, he said that having the Constitution would establish a government which would be capable of handling and controlling the violence or damage from factions. There are many interest groups that have been established, and sometimes they do cause violence and damage to the government, and the government has to control it. So James Madison already knew that it would cause a little havoc. That's why he said that his whole main purpose was to have the Constitution would help establish that government which would be capable of handling and controlling that violence. Yeah, that's kind of straightforward. So moving on to interest groups versus social movements. This is super important because you need to know the difference between interest group versus social movement. So sometimes definitions don't really help people. So I always put someone else's definition. So I forgot who I got this from, but credit to that person. So interest group versus social movement. Social movement is a loose coalition of groups and organizations with common goals that are oriented toward mass action and popular participation and share the intention of influencing the government. But interest groups, on the other hand, are former organizations, while social movements are coalitions of many groups and individuals. They have purposive incentives. For example, the feminists, they believe there should be a Women's Day. This is a purposive because they really believe in it. There's no incentive except purposive. So example, civil rights, environmental, feminist, union, movements arise differently, scandal, publicity, new generation. Like, for example, this new generation of conservatives don't really believe in so much restriction and anger and, I guess, animosity towards gays and lesbians, LGBTQ community, because it's a new generation. So, I mean, movements do arise differently. Yeah, for example, that was maybe a good example for you guys. So there's also political parties versus interest groups. Remember, interest group versus social movement, political parties versus interest groups. I guarantee you this will be on your test. I guarantee you this will be on your test. This is super important because this is kind of sometimes a hard thing to memorize, but I guarantee you if you take a separate sheet of paper out, right, and you put this and you just put this on a separate sheet of paper and memorize this, make a chart like this, you will really benefit from this. So James Madison did not distinguish between the interest groups and political parties when he referred to them as faction, but today they differ in significant ways. See, political parties, they nominate candidates to run for elective office. Interest groups, on the other hand, they may support a certain candidate for office, but they do not nominate their own candidates. Political parties focus on a broad range of issues to appeal to a wide range of electorate. So they focus on a broad range of issues. On the other hand, interest group, they take a narrow focus on one specific issue, such as gun control, abortion, or environment. So political parties compete for control of the legislative branch by trying to win the majority of the seats in Congress. But interest groups, on the other hand, just they want to influence their elected officials, and they want to influence public policy. All goes back to that. Interest groups exist to influence public policy. Political parties, on the other hand, they just want to have control over the legislative branch and has many seats as possible in Congress. Because then if there's so many seats in Congress from their party, then they don't have to worry about their issues being implemented because there's so many people who share the same interests. For example, Republicans or Democratic seats. It's going to be more of that, more of competing for political parties for control. The interest groups just want their ideologies to be implemented in law or in law. Hopefully that makes sense. I know study.com has really good videos. I really recommend study.com. If you guys want to pay for that membership, you can. I really like study.com. I don't have a membership from them, but sometimes they have half of the video for viewers and the other half you can't watch, but you have to subscribe or member, whatever. But yeah, I mean, study.com, it's pretty lit. Anyways, media bias. So these are just, I guess, definitions. Media bias is just nationally generous, tend to lean liberal. This is what my teacher, she just really told us that media bias. For example, CNN, Fox News, I hate Fox News and CNN because they both will definitely be biased. They're just Fox News is strongly conservative, and they will have biased news, and they probably will not even present facts. Same thing with CNN. CNN, everybody knows CNN as fake news. Trump's words, fake news. So I really recommend, let's say, USA Today. I'm going on a tangent, but really what you guys need to know is nationally journalists tend to lean liberal. Selective attention, it's tendency of a consumer to pay attention only to messages that address a need or interest or are consistent with the consumer's attitudes, opinions, and beliefs. So I don't know if you guys have watched this video, but it's the one with the gorilla, and you're focusing on, yes, it kind of like, yes, it was kind of like the selective attention. You're focusing on one thing, but you don't even realize there's something going on in the back, like gorilla walks right behind you. That's kind of like selective attention. You know, you're focusing on something so much that you don't even realize you're missing something else. So it's just a tendency of a consumer to pay attention only to those messages, such as, I have a very liberal teacher. He only focuses on CNN. I really recommend him to look at USA Today, which is kind of a neutral, non-biased news, but he only tends to pay attention to CNN. Same thing with a lot of Fox News conservatives. They really just focus on Fox News, and I really believe USA Today is it's like a neutral kind of website for news. Anyways, so yeah, selective attention. So trial balloon is kind of like you put that thing. Okay, for example, there's Maui. You put that. Hold on. I'll try to explain. I don't want to explain something. Y'all make no sense. So kind of like it's a tentative measure taken or statement made to see how a new policy will be received. For example, let's say Trump says, I am going to say that pizza is going to be free on Fridays nationally. People are outraged. People are very happy. He just wants to see their reaction. It's a rumor. People are rumoring that this is what Trump said. They don't know for sure if that's factually what he said, but that's a rumor of what he put out there just to see what the people would react to if we actually put that out there. It's kind of like that. It's a trial balloon, you know. It's a trial to see how they would react to the public. So a good question that they may ask you is, what are some of the ways that the government has tried to regulate the interest groups in lobbying, and why regulate? Why is it so difficult to regulate? So Congress has also attempted to slow down the so-called revolving door. If you all don't know what revolving door is, I can go back for you guys. Revolving door is a term describing the movement of individuals from governmental positions to jobs with interest groups or lobbying firms and vice versa. Let me see if this is okay, good. Yes. So revolving door, by which an official begins to lobby his or her colleagues immediately after leaving a government position. Under the 1978 Ethics in Government Act, senior executive branch officials cannot lobby federal agencies on a matter that fell within their scope of responsibilities for 2 years after leaving governmental service. In addition, they are prohibited from lobbying anyone in their former agency. So, for example, number one, on an issue for 1 year and forever on matters that they were involved in. The success of lobbyists depend on their personal ties, honestly, with those in government. For example, like those relationships were also cemented with gifts that would range from tickets to a football game to weekends at resort hotels. Reforms adopted in 1995 banned all the gifts to members of the House and put limits on the value of gifts to senators. I mean, this is really straightforward. I know my friend, her dad gets free tickets all the time to football games, to basketball games, and it's kind of like that personal insider kind of strategy. It's like the success of lobbyists just to get so close. It's kind of like a bribing thing. Yeah, so that's kind of the ways that because it's so difficult to regulate. You can't always find people caught in the action of giving someone else, oh, here's some tickets. Why don't we all hang out? I don't want anything, I'm just being nice. No, you're not. That's kind of, that's how the way they regulate interest groups and lobbying. So roles of the media, getting into media now is there's such as gatekeeper, scorekeeper, and watchdog. These terms will make sense, trust me. The national press plays role of all three for federal government. Just memorize what gatekeeper, scorekeeper, and watchdog is. It's really easy. The gatekeeper is a role that press plays by influencing what subjects become national and political issues and for how long. Think of literally a gatekeeper. He's outside and a person comes in and he says, no, you can't come in, because he's influencing what subjects get into the house. Let's say become national political issues. He's kind of gatekeeping. Scorekeeping is a role that press plays by keeping track of and helping make political reputation note who is being mentioned as a presidential candidate and help decide who is winning and losing in Washington politics. For example, I think New York Times, one of those really big mainstream medias. Yeah, so they all, like, what they did was they said Trump would have only like 15% winning rate, I guess, in the presidential election against Hillary Clinton. This is kind of like a scorekeeper thing. That's all they cared about. Just who has the score, higher score than the other person. They don't really care about the information and who with each political party or political candidate stands for. They just care about who's winning and who's losing. I'm very nonpartisan, so don't think that I'm rooting for someone. I'm just saying that the scorekeeper is who decides and who loses, who wins or loses. So watchdog, on the other hand, is a role played by the national media in investigating political personalities and exposing scandals, such as Hillary Clinton and the emails, Trump and his Russian ties. People say there isn't, but whatever. And then there's also Hillary Clinton's husband with that sex scandal with the secretary, I believe. I don't know. So that's like the watchdog media. They really just want to investigate and expose those scandals. Yeah, so I think that wraps it up. If you guys do want to see this great article my teacher presented to me, it shows the money coming in and out of the Citizens United, how it changed the politics. It shows the independent expenditure. Like I said, remember 2012? Those are the super PACs, independent expenditures. Super PAC became so high as soon as Citizens United versus FEC was established. And then same thing right here. It just shows total liberal conservatives. Conservatives really raised their outside spending. Liberals, but I think now liberals, not this is a different one, but right now liberals are exceeding conservatives right now. Yeah, so I really recommend this link. I will put this down in the description. All right, thank you guys so much for watching.